So hi, everyone. My name is Tanaya Srini. I am the Senior Director of Digital Equity for the ConnectALL office. And this is our virtual forum for community anchor institutions. We're really excited to begin this conversation with you all. I know a lot of you have been involved in various other of our engagements with the listening sessions, focus groups, surveys. I'll go over a lot of that. And then we also have some distinguished guests from NTIA and from the Treasury to share their perspectives about how CAIs can get involved. And then we will go into Q&A and conversation, because we really want to hear from you. So with that, again, I'll just say this is being recorded and we are logging the chat. So feel free to throw questions in the chat throughout the presentation. And we won't answer those questions until the Q&A portion. If we don't get to your questions, we will take note of them and find a way to get you an answer after the fact. So with that, maybe we can bring up the slides, Shoshi. Awesome. And you know, some of these will be a repeat, the first couple for those that have seen one of our presentations before, but hopefully there'll be a lot of good new information in here for you too. All right, next slide. Okay, so our agenda today is that I will give an intro for the ConnectALL office. Again, many of you have probably heard this or seen this before. We'll do a little bit of a deep dive into the SDEP and where it is right now. And then we will have our partners from NTIA give a overview of the BEAD and Digital Equity Act programs. We will hear from a colleague from the Treasury on the Capital Projects Fund. And then I will come back on to share a couple of opportunities for engagement for you all, and then we will go into Q&A and discussion. So again, please use the chat, and let's get started. Next slide, please. Okay, so intro to ConnectALL, next slide. Thank you. All right. So last year, Governor Hochul announced the historic ConnectALL initiative, which is New York's largest investment in its digital infrastructure ever. This is our way of meeting the moment that the IIJA and other infrastructural funding created in allocating unprecedented, once-in-a-generation funding to close the digital divide. The ConnectALL program, as you can see here, includes grant programs, technical assistance, and other support for municipalities, businesses, anchor institutions, and organizations. We're also working on policy innovation and regulatory reform outside of these programs. So we really feel like it's a holistic approach in that we are designed to address every angle of the digital divide simultaneously while being responsive to community needs and experiences. You know, I'll talk a little bit about the engagement in a second, but in general, the thing to note here is while the State Digital Equity Plan is a program in and of itself, that plan will also be the guiding document for all of the other investments we make. And I'll talk a little bit about our budget and timeline in subsequent slides. Next slide, please. All right, so we wanted to make sure that we shared the principles that we are grounding this work in across all the programs, across the policy innovation and regulatory reform as well. These come from our own team's experience working in digital equity, some of us for several years, some for several decades. So the first is equity, not only that no New Yorker experiences a barrier to access or well-being because of who they are, but also that the opportunities presented by the internet, like the economic and educational benefits, are widely shared. So really want to think about shared prosperity here. The second is performance, that all New Yorkers have access to robust, reliable, responsive service. And that's not just in emergency context, that's in every day. The third is choice. We want you to have a choice in the service that you're getting, and that not only means in providers, though we're definitely interested in that, but also the types of plans available to you. Inherent in this principle is that internet users have an understanding of the services they're entitled to, and that the clear mechanism exists to advocate for actually receiving that level of service. And I know that CAIs are really crucial in that civic education piece, and so we thank you for that. The next is affordability. This is pretty self-explanatory, but we want to make sure that all New Yorkers can afford their internet and don't have to choose between their internet or any other essential service in their budget. And finally, we want to make sure that New Yorkers can thrive in their online environments once we get them online. So that's not only privacy and security, but also, a sense of general well-being and comfort online. Throughout our planning process and even beyond, we want to hear from you whether these principles resonate, and we want to know how we should be applying them to your local context, and how we should measure our progress toward realizing these principles in your communities. So they're really just a draft. We hope that they resonate with you, but if they don't, we definitely want to hear about it. Next slide. So what we are tasked with is a very tall order. You'll see from our budget that we have a lot to do. In our office, we're extremely motivated by the fact that this is perhaps our country's most ambitious exercise in direct democracy and participatory planning ever. And every state and territory is undertaking the same planning process. We all have the same mandate to close the digital divide. The plan is mandated to be informed by input from stakeholders like you, and across sessions like this. And so today we're here to talk about the role of community anchor institutions, but just wanted to highlight that our plan that we produce will highlight and center what are called covered populations of the Digital Equity Act. So this includes low-income households, veterans, aging individuals, incarcerated individuals, people with disabilities, people with language barriers, racial and ethnic minorities, and rural residents. And then you'll see on the right side of your screen that we also have these other stakeholders that we pulled up. These are the players in the ecosystem that we know we can't succeed unless their expertise is engaged in the process. And so anyone that serves one of those covered populations is considered one of these other stakeholders, and you'll see, community anchor institutions is right up top. Okay, next slide. Yes, you're getting a copy of this presentation. I should have said that up top. Okay, so here are our funding sources. We are getting money from the IIJA, from ARPA, and from the New York State executive budget. The important thing to note here is while all of the resources we are slated to get, including the $665 million that was announced just yesterday, which is really exciting. So although all of the resources, they total to over, $1 billion, to date, we don't have all of that money, and we have to use the this process of planning to unlock the funding that occurs. And you'll see on the next slide that, while it looks like we already have nearly half of that because of that state executive budget, that $300 million is really our most flexible money. It's going to be used to fill gaps and be creative, because the other work that we have to do is fairly prescriptive in terms of, for example, the BEAD program. And so, and this money isn't on the timeline that the other funds are on. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that right now we're in the planning phase for both digital equity and for BEAD. We did get $100 million committed from the Treasury on our affordable housing connectivity program and are expecting more. But on that bottom timeline, you'll see that those funds expire first. And so that's going to be a really aggressive push. But on BEAD, for example, the middle timeline, we won't get the majority of that money until 2025. And so it's a long process. It's long by design so that we can really get this right. But it's important to note that we don't have the vast majority of the funding in-house at this moment. And just to note on the DE side, which is what I'm responsible for, we have our planning grant, and we have a plan that's due at the beginning of December. Our draft plan will be out for public comment in the fall, and we are hoping to move into implementation early next year. So that's on the DE side. Okay, next slide. So this is, the first of our forum series for community anchor institutions. We had one previous forum for ISPs, and we're planning a series throughout the summer and fall that will share important updates and also get important feedback from various audiences. So some of the audiences that are upcoming include local and county governments, regional planning and economic development organizations. These have been, great partners for us up until now, and so we want to continue to engage with them. Regarding our affordable housing connectivity program, we'll be speaking a lot with the affordable housing providers in the state. And then, on workforce, we'll have a lot of conversations and specifically, for labor unions and other related providers. So this is just a teaser for some of what is upcoming, and to the extent that they relate to your interests and kind of mandate as an organization, you are welcome to join. Okay, next slide. All right, so I think this is really the hallmark slide, and it has to do with how we define community anchored institutions. So one thing to note is that we have some flexibility in how we design the definition here. So we've provided here for you the definition that the federal government used in the notice of funding for BEAD. And so that means in this definition, CAIs would include schools, libraries, health clinics, health centers, other health providers, public safety providers, housing organizations. And then it also includes any organization that wants to do broadband work and serve vulnerable populations, what we would potentially call those covered populations. So it is a broad definition, but the thing to note here is that we really have to tie whatever definition we come up with to data, because if the CAIs that we define under the definition aren't available, if we don't have data on where they are, what kind of broadband service they get, we can't include them in our funding. And so while we do have an opportunity to be expansive about the definition, we also have to make sure that any expansion we do, we have geographic data in particular that we can use to locate you all automatically. Okay, next slide. All right, so just to give a little bit of insight into the state digital equity plan, you can go to the next slide. So to give you a broader sense of all the engagement that we're doing beyond this forum series and potentially anything else that you've been involved with CAO, we just recently completed all 10 of our listening sessions across each of the 10 regions in the state. The slides and summary notes from each session, except New York City, it's not up yet, but it will be, are on our website. And if you look at those listening sessions, those were really used as the kickoff of our planning process. And so you'll start to get a sense of the variations by region and also the themes that emerge across the state in terms of barriers, opportunities, and needs. We also partnered with digital equity coalitions. I think many of you are part of those coalitions across the state to collect more insights from communities. And so currently they are wrapping up convening over 30 focus groups across the state. And each of those focus groups was focused on a covered population. And so that was really our opportunity to zoom in on the lived experts. We also, as many of you know, have a statewide survey that is available right now, and it closes on Friday. So if you have not filled out that survey, and if you have not sent it to all the people you serve, that would be a great next step. And reminder, you have about 3 days to complete it. You can find it on broadband.ny.gov. But that's really important because it's our primary quantitative tool that we'll have during the planning process. And so especially if you work with anyone that belongs to one of the priority groups I highlighted, those covered populations, we really appreciate your support and in sending that out so we can get their insights. As I noted, we have a series of virtual forums for different stakeholders. And then we're also collecting submissions for what will become a publicly available directory of assets for digital equity. And so that we're managing the data inflow right now, and then we're figuring out how we can make that a publicly available data set that is continuously updated later in the year. So that is the overview on the state digital equity plan. Maybe next slide. Kind of like forgetting what slide comes next. Oh yes, okay. So outside of our programs, we are also really engaged on the Affordable Connectivity Program, which I'm sure a lot of you have been engaged on too. There are obviously some policy considerations given that the funding is slated to run out next year, but we are doing our part to get the word out. You can verify eligibility and apply at affordableconnectivity.gov. There's also a number listed here for enrollment support. The big takeaway here is that we have more than 1.3 million New Yorkers enrolled in this program, which is a great number, but it just means that the next million are going to be even harder to get enrolled because these were the easy ones, perhaps. And so, your help and partnership in continuing to get that enrollment number up is very much appreciated. And if you have ideas for further engagement on this, please feel free to share. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to get into the nitty-gritty details on funding opportunities for CAIs, but this is just to point out, the major opportunities. So as I said, our state digital equity capacity grant program within New York State that we're doing this planning process for, we're hoping to move into implementation for that between Q1 and Q2 of next year in 2024. And then, we have 5 years to spend that money. And then NTIA will also open a separate grant program that they will tell you about shortly for organizations running digital equity programs. And so we will be here to support your applications to that program. But it's important to know that they're two completely separate programs, two completely separate funding sources. But we will, we want you to get that money, and we'll be here to support your applications. And that's coming up in 2025. Okay, so with that, I believe that concludes my slides. Is that right, Joshi? Can you go to the next slide? Yes, okay, perfect. So I am going to pass it off to New York State's Federal Program Officer, Jodia Vanell, who is going to take you through some of that, the more detailed explanation of the funding opportunities available. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Tanaya, for going through that thorough overview. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it is afternoon right now. I'm Jodia Vanell, broadcasting live from BRIC in Brooklyn, another organization. So we are here today with a conference talking about all of the things that we're doing in the state, along with the ConnectALL office, and engaging with folks just like you, community-based organizations or anchored institutions. So just wanted to give them a shout out. All right, so I'm going to go into a little bit about what we're doing from NTIA. I will blast through the slides just a little bit fast so that you all could ask every and any questions that you may have. Also with me will be Knowledge Build Hudson, who is our amazing digital equity advisor on behalf of U.S. Department of Commerce and NTIA, and he'll be weaving in the conversation and then specifically talking about the digital equity side of the house. All right, so let's dig into it. All right, so just level setting this, yesterday, if you all haven't seen President Biden talk about what we're doing from NTIA and U.S. Department of Commerce, the background on this, it was a bipartisan infrastructure law that went into place that actually gave us the funding that is necessary to dive into this project. As of yesterday, I am so happy and pleased to announce that New York is getting $664 million in BEAD funding to start the work. The money is not coming right now, but that's what's been allotted to our state. All states across the United States and its territories also made their announcements yesterday. So yesterday was a huge day for us. It's a huge day for New York, and I really look forward to working with everyone on this call to actually use that funding responsibly and to ensure that everyone is connected throughout New York. And don't mind my background. There are people that are walking in and out around the conference. Next slide, please. So in making sure that there's affordable, reliable, high-speed internet, there are just certain things that we're very focused on, and that is access, making sure that every American has access to the internet. Specifically, we're talking about New York, right? Also making sure that it is affordable to folks. Like, people should not, have to decide on whether you're going to feed your children versus affording the internet. We want to make sure that this is affordable. And then on top of that, not only are we going to deploy internet throughout the state of New York, we want to make sure that there's great adoption to this. And how are we going to do that is really getting involved in digital equity, digital literacy. So I just wanted to set the foundation for everyone on this call to just understand truly what the pillars are of our mission and what we're trying to accomplish in the next several years. Next slide. How do we do this and why do we do it? Clearly, everyone on this call knows about the internet and the challenges that we have faced, particularly during the pandemic period. And so what we're essentially trying to do is make sure that people get to live their lives, work, have the freedom to do whatever they want to do. And so here we're just illustrating why internet connection, broadband, is important to New York. These are all of the folks that play a critical role in all of this, and we're doing it to ensure that every group here represented, and there's so much more, that they have access to the internet to be able to take care of their daily needs and requirements. Next, please. So this is the big announcement, right? Yesterday, as I mentioned, the president talked about what we're doing specifically in New York. Out of the funding that's available, it's $664 million that is allocated to our state. And so here we're showing you the timeline so that everyone knows. I know the question's been, well, when are we going to get involved? Where are we in the process? We're going to go a little bit through the process so that you understand exactly where we are. So at this point, we're really truly in the planning stages of everything. We're working extremely close with Tanaya and Josh Breitbart and the amazing ConnectALL office to ensure that everyone has insights. We did that through, and some of you all may have been participating in this through the listening session so that we hear directly from you, get your insights, talk about the challenges. Now we're going to get into the reporting side, a little bit more of the critical pieces to get an official approval at the end of the time period. And so right now, myself, Tanaya and the entire group are working on building out our initial proposal. We'll talk a little bit about that and why that's so important. It really requires all of the help from everyone on this call in order to provide insights to the NTIA, U.S. Department of Commerce. And essentially at the end of the year, this report is due. It means that we've touched multiple people. We've talked about what the plan is going to be for New York, how we're going to deploy it. We're literally building, designing the plan for the next several years. And it will be submitted to myself along with our regional director and our assistant secretary of state to ultimately get approved. So before Josh and the ConnectALL team can actually tap into the funds, all of these mandates need to be in place and essentially approved so that we can tap into the $664 million that have been allocated. And as you can see, this is just telling us and visualizing what the process is going to look like through 2026 and beyond. Next. And you'll see some of these numbers here, but as of yesterday, it was the game changer, and now we know what numbers we're working with. And so this is important for everyone to know. I work with the ConnectALL office. The ConnectALL office is my eligible entity. It is the state that has been established with a broadband office that we are the folks providing the grants and TIA. And so my direct relationship is with ConnectALL. And then there are all of you all that we work with, we gain insight. But ultimately, when we get to the point of procurement and engaging, you all are considered the sub-grantees. And so with the sub-grantees, you will work directly with the ConnectALL office to deliver all of the needs. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that piece. The eligible entity, the federal government works with the eligible entity, AKA the state of New York, AKA the ConnectALL office, AKA Empire State Development. Next slide. And again, just we've talked about this a number of times, and you totally get it. What are we focusing in terms of BEAD? We're focusing on access, affordability, adoption, and equity. BEAD is broadband, equity, access, and deployment. There's a bad joke out there that you can't have. If you take away the E out of BEAD, it's just bad programming, right? It's critical to have that equity piece in here. And this is a place where you all play such a great role in ensuring that equity is brought into New York. Next slide, please. So again, just to level set, I know some of you all understand this, but we're always talking to the new folks that are on this line about the entire programming. What are we trying to achieve here? We are looking at unserved location and underserved locations. So when this funds come in, we are looking at those locations first before anyone else comes in. As you can see here in this slide, it shows you first, second, and then third is the anchored institution. And that is essentially whatever funds are left over, or if there are funds left over, then we get to tap into anchored institutions such as yourself. But the goal of BEAD, the goal of the president is to tap in and ensure that every American is connected. So how do we do that? We're prioritizing unserved, underserved locations first and foremost. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is just a reiteration, and I haven't taken a look to see exactly how many ISPs are on this call. Those are the internet service providers and other stakeholders, but this is sort of what we're saying. In order to participate in this program, we want to make sure that there are certain criteria that are met. So again, the BEAD program is to include low-cost broadband services for all of the eligible subscribers. So we're asking that in order to, deliver and be part of this, or to be a sub-grantee, these are the options that we want for when we're connecting folks throughout the state of New York, is to provide these options there for people who truly are not able to afford this or be able to connect. And Knowledge Build, if you want to chime in on anything, please do. And so here it's another slide. It's just really, and again, as I mentioned, fresh off the press, this information changed yesterday. Initially, we knew that, ultimately states would be getting or could tap into 100 million or so. We know as of now, we're working with real numbers. It's $664 million that has been allocated to the state of New York to provide again, reliable, affordable, high-speed internet. And so this slide eventually will be updated to show that new funding based on New York. And it's reiterating the points, what we're going after and who we are targeting. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to blast through this a little bit, but I want everyone to really understand where we are in the process. We're working with the ConnectALL office to develop the initial proposal. The initial proposal is going to be a critical document that lays out what is going to happen in the state of New York and what the actual plan is. We're working extremely close with the ConnectALL office and other stakeholders to build that out. So this is a slide illustrating just the entire process of all of that. So we're going to develop the proposal, the initial proposal, and then there's going to be a challenge process here. This is where different stakeholders can challenge. This is particularly important for your community, the anchored institutions, because you can actually challenge and community-based organizations can challenge on behalf of individuals. So you play a critical role in this process. You get to review the information, you get to challenge anything that you don't think benefits certain folks. So I just wanted to point that piece out. Ultimately, when we get to a certain point, there will be an approval of the initial proposal that is approved by the Assistant Secretary of State, Alan Davison, and then funds will be released after that part. As you can see, 20% of the funds become available, and that's when we start in engaging with subgrantee selection, and that's when you will engage even more with the ConnectALL office. But during this process, we are building, we're working together, we're collaborating to get the initial proposal done and done really, really, really well. So we lay out the foundation of what is to come in New York. We cannot do that without the help of every single person on this call. Next slide, please. And so ultimately, there's going to be a final proposal that's also due, right? This whole process, many of you may not know, but there's so many documentation that is needed. This is a full transparent process. We are spending taxpayer dollars. We want to make sure that we're doing this right in every way possible. And so after initial proposal, we continue to work through the process, and ultimately there is a final proposal that is due within 1 year of that initial proposal. And so that ultimately is going to certify and say, yes, the state of New York, aka the ConnectALL office, is eligible for everything that they've stated is to happen, and the funds are ultimately released to deploy, create the infrastructure in New York for broadband to get all of the community-based organization, anchored institution, every stakeholder involved to also deliver other critical elements such as digital equity. Next slide. And so we're going to go into the digital equity piece, which Knowledge Build will take over. I just want to say during this process, it's important to stay very connected with ConnectALL. That is the platform. So if you haven't saved it as your favorite website, please do, because that is where you hear from us, because they're delivering the information that is specific to the state of New York. During this process, the challenge process is going to be extremely important. That's where everyone has a voice. Everything becomes public after we've documented this information. Then we're to share it and make sure that everyone gives their insights and challenge whatever is critically needed. So we need to be lockstep with each other. And I just want to make sure that you understand these full words. It's a collaborative process. Everyone has a stake in all of this. It is now, it was real before, very much real, but it could have been thought of as more like conceptualizing what we're doing. It's extremely real, especially after yesterday's announcement of exactly how much money we have. We need to do this responsibly. We need to do it together. So I really look forward to working with everyone in the ConnectALL office to attack the B portion of all of this. And Knowledge Bill is going to take over and give you some really exciting news of how this particular community can engage more on the digital equity side. So Knowledge Bill, please take over.
Peace and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Jody. I appreciate giving us a great overview about BEAD programming and the opportunities that are available for community anchorage institutions. I'm just going to talk a little bit about Digital Equity Act programs. Based off the time, I think I'll be able to cover it. So we'll go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is basically just an overview of the funds, right? So Jody talked about the fact that there was $42.45 billion invested towards BEAD, right? And that's for territories, tribes, as well as the United States plus Puerto Rico, as well as DC. There's $2.75 billion that's allocated, that will be allocated towards the Digital Equity Act programs. Could you go to the next slide, please? I guess I could have talked about middle mile and tribal there too, but I sort of breezed past it. I want to just focus on the Digital Equity Act stuff specifically. So currently we are in our planning phase, right? So there was $60 million allocated towards planning, but soon we'll be pivoting to our community, the implementation dollars. And that's the $1.44 billion for capacity grant, which is given directly to states for them to implement those holistic plans, right? And then there's the competitive grant funding, which is $1.25 billion, which will go to folks as yourself, like nonprofit, community anchorage institutions, local educational agencies, et cetera, right? And that money comes directly from NTIA. Now, the capacity grant funds, and I don't think I put a timeline slide, but that process will probably start taking place early 2024. That's when we'll release the NOFO and things like that. The competitive grant funds, I think it was tonight, I talked about it a little bit earlier, will be somewhere around late 24, 25. So, but if you stay in tune with the ConnectALL, they will let you know, they'll keep you updated with when the funds are coming and how you can access them from them, as well as how to stay in tune with us. So go to the next slide, please. Now, with the digital equity team, specifically our project, the Digital Equity Act programs, is focused on the covered populations, right? And you'll see them highlighted here in blue: low income individuals, aging individuals, incarcerated individuals, veterans, people with language barriers, racial and ethnic minorities. So it's not just racial, but it's also ethnic minorities, rural inhabitants. And on this slide, you'll also see the underrepresented communities that are outlined in BEAD. So, persons adversely affected by poverty or inequity, indigenous or native folks, right? The reason why I like this slide is because it shows the relationship between, well, one, we recognize that these fundings are allocated to people who have been often skipped over. Communities have been left out of opportunities. So with the intention of ensuring that they do have what they need to be full participants in the digital economy, right? So, and there is some overlay too. So you can see, even though there's the red ones and the blue ones, we can see that there's overlay there. Next slide, please. So from a digital equity lens, or I don't like to say lens because you take lenses off, right? But from a digital equity standpoint, our team's perspective is try to do things based off of a social determinants of health model, right? And, this slide really shows okay, education, access, and quality, neighborhood and built environment, social and community context, economic stability, healthcare access, and quality are all the 5 social determinants of health. And if you don't know about the social determinants of health, I encourage you to do some research, and you'll see as you read that why we identify the super determinant of health is the internet. And that's why we have it there in the middle, right? Because access to the internet is really a huge opportunity or barrier to people's pathway to self-sufficiency, pathway to growth and development, like you said, economic stability. So, we try to utilize this model to ensure that we're being people-centered, and that we're focused on how do we help them have more connect to like I said, be holistic members of society, right? I don't know if that makes it, not holistic members of society, full participants in the digital economy is a better way of describing that. Next slide, please. All right, now Jody was speaking about this a lot, right? As far as every stakeholder is playing a role. And, regardless of how many telecom providers are here on the call, or folks from tribal government or local government, we know that all of the folks play a role, especially down to the individual. So even if you're not a part of a community organization, or you're not a community anchorage institution, and even if you do work for a community anchorage institution, when you go home, you're just an individual, right? So it's important that we all participate in the role, we all have a role to play in the Digital Equity Act programs, right? So maybe your neighbor needs access to devices, or maybe someone down the street needs access to digital skills. We can all play a role in how we ensure that everyone has everyone's connected and has the right devices as well as the digital skills to be full participants. Now, specifically with community anchorage institutions, you're in a unique space because you can actually apply for funds to play that role by working with the state and or partnering with the federal government in order to be a part of the solution as far as getting paid to do the work versus just volunteering. But I want to just stress that it's important that everyone plays a part. Next slide, please. Now, this gives us the potential to engage large diverse groups and stakeholders. Now, the reason why I put this slide up here is because I wanted to, this last sentence to me says a lot of this, the importance of stakeholder engagement is allows us to develop these inclusive, ambitious, and responsible broadband plans, right? And so Josh and Tanai are doing a great job. I want to just tip my hat to the work that they're doing to ensure that everyone in New York State is connected, right? As well as the consultants are working strongly with them, with Jodia, right? But this is no lie. It takes all of you, right? And so from the private to the public to the community serving stakeholders in order to make this happen. So even with their fierce leadership, we need you to participate in this process to help us bridge the digital divide. And it takes me to my final slide, which is our pathway, our roadway to digital inclusion. This is the definition that we're looking at, what digital inclusion allows you to collectively build, to advance and ensure digital equity and improve outcomes for unconnected communities, right? And so on this path, you might pick up a variety of different things, one of the things that's not often talked about is quality technical support. So after you have a device, after you have the skills, do you have the technical support that's needed? And who's providing technical support? Where are the agencies providing technical support for folks to make sure that they're not sending money to the Nigerian prince who is in jail or something, or whatever those spam emails that we receive, right? Or telling them to just turn your device on and off, right? Not just having access to internet, but having also, adoption, right? So the internet might be in your neighborhood, but how are we ensuring that people are adopting the internet services that are available to them, right? We know totally that this will, and most of us know this is going to lead us to quality health or improved health opportunities, better opportunities for education, civic participation, right? Better employment and essential services. So that's our destination. And I want to just thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you all today. And I look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Knowledge Build. And thank you, Jodia. I think next up we have Anna from the Treasury to share a bit about capital projects. You are still named as panelist, just so you know.
I am just noticing that, but
Okay.
I will try to rename myself while talking. I am Anna Reed. I am New York's point of contact for the Department of Treasury's Capital Projects Fund. And I will give a little bit of background on what the Capital Projects Fund is and New York's allocation. The Capital Projects Fund was created through the American Rescue Plan Act. So it is a pandemic recovery program. As a result, the requirements are a little bit different than they are with the BEAD funding. And they are really focused on some of those impacts and aspects of recovery from the pandemic. As a result, the funding needs to meet three criteria. First, investing in capital assets that are designed to directly enable work, education, and health monitoring, recognizing that these were challenges when people did not have sufficient connectivity during the pandemic. It needs to be designed to address a critical need that resulted from or was made apparent or exacerbated by the pandemic, the COVID-19 public health emergency. And then it needs to be designed to address a critical need in the community that will be served by the project. Broadband infrastructure is a major component of this program. It is not the only eligible use. In addition to broadband infrastructure projects, recipients who are states, tribal governments, territories, and freely associated states can also use the funding to support digital connectivity projects and multipurpose community facility projects. So focusing then more on the broadband infrastructure piece on the next slide, a couple key components of the Capital Projects Fund. Treasury requires projects that are funded with CPF dollars to meet or exceed 100 megabits per second symmetrical speed requirement. If the program is unable to meet these because of impracticability, geography, topography, issues of excessive cost, the projects can be 120 scalable to that 100 standard. There is a preference for both fiber and for projects focusing on last mile rather than middle mile connectivity. Any subawards, any projects funded through the Capital Projects Fund are required to participate in the Affordable Connectivity Program. And in addition, there is a focus on defining how they will support or facilitate affordability as well. And then again, determining a critical need in that community that's served by the project. So identifying with available data what that need is and how these projects support that. And then an emphasis on community engagement and identifying what those needs are and ongoing throughout the life of the project. So moving on then to just a general overview of the program. So this is formula funding to states. Each state received an allocation and then submits program plans to Treasury in line with those three eligible uses. Again, the broadband infrastructure, digital connectivity projects, and multipurpose community facilities. To date, actually, slight update, 45 states have been approved to invest over $7 billion of CPF funding in broadband projects, as well as those other eligible uses. And with the broadband project, states currently estimate that these will reach close to 2 million locations. So moving on to New York, New York's allocation was $345.45 million. To date, a plan has been approved for the Affordable Housing Connectivity Program, which is $100 million and expected to bring service to about 100,000 locations. So happy to answer any questions about CPF and looking forward to continuing to work with New York going forward.
Thanks, Anna. Oh, let me turn on my video again. Awesome. Okay, so we are getting very close to our Q&A and discussion time. So again, please throw any questions you have in the chat and make sure that you're directing it to the chat to everyone so that everybody can see what's already been asked. I am just going to take the opportunity right now to go through the other areas of engagement that we think are appropriate for community anchor institutions. So next slide, please. Okay, so today, the most important thing you can do is to complete the survey that we will send after this session. I know that you all feel over-surveyed, but this is specifically about community anchor institution needs. There is a lot in there about identifying the kind of service that you have, also identifying the needs, the barriers, and the opportunities that you see specifically as community anchor institutions. So it's really important for us to get this data, and that's the single most important thing that you can do today. Additionally, we want you to continue to engage with digital equity coalitions in your region. And if you need or you're interested in being connected with the coalition, that is a perfectly good use of our time, and we would be happy to connect you if you email us. We also want your participation in future stakeholder forums, and the schedule for those forums will be up on our website. And again, that's broadband.ny.gov. I didn't touch on this before, but we with the New York State Library convene a digital equity task force. And we have several town halls. The next one is on Thursday on workforce development. But all of those town halls are available on our website, broadband.ny.gov, and you are all welcome to join, particularly if you are a workforce development program provider. And then, you should feel free to raise awareness of ConnectALL funding opportunities with your community. So today, the single most important thing you could do, again, is to complete the survey. And I just want to highlight that while we are, providing a lot of information for you all today, the two-way feedback loop can only happen if we get a high response rate on that survey. And I promise you, these are questions you haven't seen before. They're specific to the anchor institution community. Okay, next slide. All right, so coming up later this year, we would love for you to participate in our state challenge process. The design for that process is underway, so it is not available yet. Separately, something important that you could do that was not on that previous slide, I would say it's the second most important thing you can do today, is to check the FCC map and understand whether you show up on that map and how you are characterized on that map. We will likely be providing additional guidance on how we think the best way for you to participate in that program is. But for now, familiarize yourself with that map. This is the FCC broadband map. And maybe somebody can throw a link to it in the chat. And start to understand if your organization is represented on that map. Additionally, the draft of our digital equity plan and BEAD initial proposal will be available in the fall for public comment. We will likely hold similar forums to this, both in person and virtual, to get your feedback on that plan, but please look out for that plan starting in September. And next slide. Okay, and coming up in 2024 and 2025, we want you to participate in our programs. So right now we're getting feedback from you to understand how to design those programs. But once they're designed, we want you to answer our RFAs. So look forward to that, particularly on the Digital Equity Capacity Grant Program, which is coming up next year. You can apply directly to NTIA for funds on the competitive grant program. And as Knowledge Build said, that'll be at the end of 2024 and going into 2025. And you should continue to collaborate with ISPs, digital equity organizations, and other entities for applying for funds. As Jodia noted, without the equity piece of BEAD, which is that major chunk of funding, the 665 million, these programs will be bad. So ISPs need you. Digital equity organizations need you to really make their applications robust and viable for funding. And so this is a great opportunity to grow your network, to collaborate more directly, and we will do anything on our part to facilitate that as needed. And then continue to engage with us. Keep up with us on our website, broadband.ny.gov. And we have all of your emails now if you've joined. So that way we're able to get you on various blasts of upcoming engagement efforts and other updates to the program. But if you have additional questions, I think the next slide has our email. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, I guess Q&A discussion, but I will throw or ask Rose, our outreach director, to throw our email in the chat. And we're always available to have an additional conversation with you if you're interested. Okay. So on to Q&A and discussion. Next slide. We have a set of questions that we want to move through. You can feel free to come off mute if you want. Maybe you can raise your hand and we can call on folks. But also you should feel free to use the chat. We have multiple people monitoring the chat as well. But to start out, we're curious about the role that you want to play in addressing broadband and digital equity needs in New York. So please feel free to share in the chat or raise your hand and we can call on you.
I think there's a question from Sarah Messerve. Forgive me if I pronounce your name correctly. I see a hands raised.
Sarah, yeah,
Yes.
feel free to come up.
So one of the things that we've known, so I'm the director of IT from a small college in New York. We're based in Queens, and for years, what we've seen is honestly, our constituents are normally from immigrant families, first time going to college. We're one of the few colleges where aeronautics, engineering, technology, and we're able to move people forward within a generation from a lower income strata to middle high income strata. And so that is sort of our focus. And what we've seen in that, to get to the point, is we have a lot of people coming into the college where we just assume everyone has a smartphone and knows how to use it. It's not true. We assume people are proficient with email or how to navigate the internet, and we know that that's not true. We have about a third of our constituents that need that basic training. And when we're talking about the role that community anchor institutions play, I think colleges are, and all colleges, I think, are able to see a really good cross section. You know, we have these assumptions, and to do with digital equity, we know absolutely that that is not true. And we can speak to those people directly and help educate them, and then reach out to their families and people in our communities and further in a way that I think that other institutions really can't. So I think we play an integral role.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I mean, thank you for your work and also for your comment. I think we absolutely share in that, and that is what our data is revealing too, that there's various assumptions made, particularly about young people because they're digital natives, and it's just not true that they have all of the skills they need, and particularly for those high skill jobs that I think you're talking about as you move people from low income to middle and high income earners. I think that Carrie is echoing this as well, that the access is not enough, though it is a major focus of ours, that the skills have to be there so that people can actually use the access. And that is, if it wasn't clear before, that is absolutely a piece of the puzzle. And so when you think about the three legs of the digital equity stool, I think from the federal government's perspective, that's actually expanded, but digital skills and digital fluency, digital skills acquisition, whatever you want to call it, is absolutely a major pillar of the digital equity grant making that we will be doing next year. And sure, yes. I was naming young folks as one assumption, but agreed. Everyone, all New Yorkers need these skills. And it's interesting because as a covered population, aging adults are included and young people aren't. But I think that's to make sure that they're included across all the covered populations that they may fall under. So thank you for that comment, and thank you, Carrie, for reiterating.
If I can just add one point to that.
Yeah,
I know that there are some colleges that are represented here. So we also did a blast on all of the minority serving institutions. There are so many resources that NTIA provided. I put it in the chat, like your direct contact. Please, like, it is our job to get you as much resources as possible. Reach out to your federal contact also, because you all are part of a greater community with us. And so they're always, whether it's webinars, bringing more resources or getting your direct insights, it's critical. So please check the chat. Michelle Lamel is your contact. You can always contact me too, because I'm overseeing the state of New York, but that person provides you with every and any resource that you need to engage and spread the word further.
Thank you, Jodia. Yeah, so just to reiterate, Jodia is available as a resource. That's jvanel@ntia.gov. and Michelle, who was super helpful in making sure that we could get all of your emails as minority serving institutions to put this forum on your radar. She's also available to you, and that's mlamel@ntia.gov. Thanks. Okay, so I see a question from Allison. Hi, Allison, thanks for joining. She says, our org is exploring extending our Wi-Fi to the surrounding neighborhood so that folks can have free Wi-Fi access. What funding source should we tap into? This is a really good question. So I think, you know, one thing that we haven't said explicitly here because we don't, you know, we haven't really been able to plan towards like the exact amount of money until yesterday, but we are working under the assumption that there will not be leftover funds in that prioritization from BEAD for community anchored institutions. So that means that from, you know, a grant making perspective, there's potentially a role for that work in the digital equity grant making process. And then there's also that, that 300 million that we have in reserve. That's for a lot of different things, because again, what we are able to do with that 665 million is honestly like fairly prescribed to us already. We have to get everyone that's unserved, and then we have to get everybody that's underserved. And you know, as a peek into the modeling, it does not look like 665 million will even be sufficient given how expensive it is to develop high quality broadband in New York. And so I would say that it's really important to share that kind of approach in all the data collection that we're doing now so that we can factor it in as we're designing the digital equity grant program. And then to also, you know, continue to bring it up if it is not something that is accounted for or it's not, you know, funding that you can access. So that, you know, with our additional funds and, you know, as we go after more funding, we can make sure that that's a strategy that we can fund. Do we have a list of ISPs that we could collaborate with? You know, we are really happy to play a matchmaking role for you all. We just had an ISP forum, and with them, we indicated that, you know, if they're interested in getting connected with their digital equity coalition or with certain organizations, then we would ask those organizations if they want to be connected, and then, you know, share information across. So we do have a list of ISPs that we work with, or that, you know, that have, sorry, we haven't actually done any work yet. So we have a list of ISPs that are engaged with our office, and we can absolutely talk later, Sarah, potentially via email, about what the right process is for connecting you with ISPs, because obviously we want to make sure that we're getting you to the right people that actually work in your region. But that is a function that we're willing to play at the ConnectALL office. So again, use our email for that. And just to reiterate for anyone that popped in late, the slides and the recording will be available after the meeting. We'll also have summary notes available on our website in a few weeks. Okay, so does anybody else have thoughts on the role that community anchor institutions play? I heard a lot on digital skills acquisition. I'm not sure if there's other roles that that you all are playing right now or would like to play with, you know, if there were additional resources made available. So maybe we'll just pause on this for another minute. Feel free to raise your hand or to throw your thoughts in the chat.
Christine Carr and Ron Velez has their hands up.
Okay, awesome. Christine, do you want to go first? Christine, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
How is that?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone. In this process, we have embraced not only digital literacy as part of the equity, but also equipment and to the understanding of awareness for broadband and connectivity. There's so many barriers when it comes to just understanding holistically what it means. Many times when we're doing training, folks may think that they're already connected by getting a computer. And so there's that language in between. So I just want to raise the awareness of that sensitivity, that the folks that are new learners or the new adopters, they hear things, but they don't always know how to connect those dots. So thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Christine. And can you, for everyone's information, just share your organization?
Yes, I'm sorry. This is Christine Carr-Barmacy. I am with Mission Ignite. We rebranded from Computers for Children, and we've been in existence for 27 years with the three-legged stool, as it's referred to, right? That is digital literacy and adoption, and equipment access, and then understanding of internet and availabilities.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. And yeah, just to echo your point, I think that the device access is one question. Obviously, that is, one of those three traditional legs of the digital equity stool. With this federal funding that's available, we're able to expand these two other legs that I maybe should have explained earlier, but one of them is tech support for those devices, which I think is really crucial and part of what you're talking about in terms of connecting the dots.
Yes.
So that's absolutely an eligible use of funds. And just to kind of round out that five-legged stool image, the last is on cybersecurity, safety online, awareness of privacy, those types of programs.
And that is really becoming a large too. Tanaya, I do want to just emphasize that there with the, even with phones and our senior population and how the access to more technology, the security piece of it, we need to let folks feel comfortable and how to use it. And if they know how to use it, then they will feel confident and comfortable to use it for their life.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. Ron, do you want to come off mute?
Let's see. Can you hear me? Hi, it's Ron Velez at White Plains Public Schools in Westchester County. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate one, thank you for having these meetings. These have been very informative and learning how this process is going to eventually work. But I did want to say in terms of the community anchor institutions and, at the public school district level, we are integrally involved in digital literacy and obviously student safety and cybersecurity. So, I really want to make sure as all these discussions start to go on is that, between the local school districts, the city school districts and New York State Ed, that they are involved in this process from a curriculum level and of a cybersecurity level, because we have a lot to bring to the table in this regard and dealing with very young children. And so we're uniquely positioned to deal with, kids as young as 5 and some even younger with the pre-K kids. So I just wanted to reiterate that. I wanted to know is eventually who will New York State be giving out funding to in these applications? Are these just going to be certain local municipalities, school districts, or will they be allowed to be a collaborative kind of application process between, let's say, a school district, municipality, and ISP? Is there a concept of this yet? I know it's just brand new, but I'm thinking more of a concept at this point.
Yeah, no, that's great. Ron, to your earlier comment, I just want to share, we absolutely think of our schools and BOCES as a really key partner in this. And we, I spoke really briefly about that digital equity task force on the town halls, but we had a really successful education meeting about a month ago. And the cybersecurity piece was actually its own breakout session. You can access the video of that session and I believe some summary notes as well. Rose can tell me if I'm wrong, if they haven't made it to the website yet, but they should be on our website shortly if they are not there yet. And after you review those, any of the BOCES or educational partners here, if you have additional thoughts, we would love to hear them. And then To your second question, I think, part of our responsibility as CAO is to build the field of digital equity. And so we're absolutely looking to invest in the capacity of ecosystems, of new partnerships. I don't have specific details about how the application process will work yet because we are, refining those guidelines and things like that. But I can say that we're very interested in making sure that the deployment piece and the equity piece go hand in hand, and obviously that would require partnerships in the field. And so that is on our mind. If you have more specific thoughts, please feel free to email us and share, but we're absolutely thinking about that as a way to get the money out there more effectively. Okay, great. Maybe let's move to the next question so we can make sure to get to all of them. Okay, so this is your opportunity to tell us at CAO, at the federal government, what you need to be able to do your role. So this could be, resources that you need to continue to play the role that you play in your community. It could also be resources that you need to scale your work to be able to reach more folks in need. It could also be a new role that you've identified based on the engagement that you're doing with your community, something that is not available to them right now, but that you would be well positioned to play. So we would love to hear about the resources that you need. I am going to catch up on the chat right now, so I'm going to go on mute, but if you would like to raise your hand or throw your thoughts in the chat, we can go from there. In the interim, I just want to raise that those summary notes and recording from the Education Town Hall are available. And yes, thank you, Ron, for continuing to stay engaged with us. Really appreciate it. To Bob's question, so exactly, the rural areas that you're serving are exactly the priority areas for BEAD, those people that have never been able to have fiber and are relying on inadequate cell coverage for wireless. That is the priority in BEAD, and so we have to fund getting to those areas. I'll also say that on the cellular the cellular coverage front, that is not a main activity that we've covered today, but it is something that we're thinking of in the policy realm. So fewer updates on that to date, but it is an activity that we're working on in the office. Okay, so to elevate some things in the chat, because I don't think I see anyone with their hand raised. I think we're seeing increasing needs regarding fiber, pairs access, and aging hardware overall. So increasing fiber availability and access to funds to replace hardware would be our top concerns. Replacing hardware is absolutely something that came up, particularly in the education meeting, that I hadn't been thinking about as much. So appreciate you elevating that. I think there's the piece about how to make sure that these devices stay up to date. There's the piece about, conveying the value of these devices to people so that they take care of them. And also the e-waste sort of question as well. So a lot to think about there. Thank you, Sarah. Carrie said certified school librarians in every school are needed in order to ensure that information literacy skills are taught to all students. This is really useful. We have a strong partnership with our state library and many of the libraries and library resource councils across the state. And I hadn't thought about this particular role. So thank you for elevating that, of the certified school librarian that is doing that important skill acquisition work. Let me stop talking for a second so you all can continue to process. Thank you, Jodia, for the reminder. Again, this is your opportunity to share the kinds of resources that could help you to do your work, and not only the areas that we need to prioritize in the grant making. Carolyn echoed school librarians and raised that they need to be supported at all levels of schooling. I see Paul that said aging folks need assistive hardware and software. This is definitely on our radar. We have some really great advocates from the aging adults community, as well as the disability community, that have put this on our radar. And I think we have plans as well to kind of audit all of the resources that we're publishing on our office, as well as taking a look across the state as well. This is one of the outcome areas that we need to report on, which is the accessibility of government services. So in that respect, with this assistive hardware and software, that is on our mind. Okay, so I see Pat, who says public libraries as trusted messengers play an important role in providing resources and information to the public. What we need is funding to promote the library as a resource for digital skills, digital safety, and literacy in multiple languages and in a variety of platforms. Okay, so absolutely funding for libraries. Will there be public Wi-Fi access points? That's a really good question. As I said before, the brunt of the BEAD funding is really focused on residences. But we know how important these WAPs are. So thank you for raising that, Peter. And thanks for joining us. And then Ron says, will the grants cover community infrastructure, or will the focus mainly on funding reimbursement like the ACP, or both? I'm not quite sure what you mean. I think my answer would be that the primary focus of the funding that we've talked about today, from the BEAD perspective, is on infrastructure, and from the DE perspective is on services and programs and providers to build that capacity. So I think I would say at this point that it's less on reimbursement, but if you want to add to that question, happy to continue that conversation. And I think we have 10 minutes left, so maybe we'll move to the last slide. Okay, so I think we've already gotten a lot of ideas on what the state should prioritize, but very welcome to share more, any of you, on other things to kind of promote on our radar. And then if there are ways that you want to be involved in our planning process, we'd also love to hear that. I really thank all of the libraries, schools, program providers that have joined us in this journey. Anyone that's a member of their Digital Equity Coalition has played a key role in getting us to the point where we are, able to draft a state digital equity plan. Never thought that would be possible when I joined just a few months ago. But we did that all with your partnership and really appreciate it. But if there's other areas that you want to be able to plug into, now would be a good time to raise those. And again, you can raise your hand or put your ideas in the chat. Any additional thoughts here on priorities or ways to be involved?
Ron and Sarah has their hands up.
Awesome. Ron, go ahead.
Unmuted. Okay. No, it's real quickly, there's never enough time. There's lots of ideas for planning and prioritizing. So my suggestion would be, what maybe some sort of more formalized form or planning to make the plan. Like this is not enough time to even or the form which to do that. But I think there needs to be a form for which we can bring together everybody together. I don't know who everybody is, to prioritize that and then be able to present that out in a forum like this. Again, this is not enough time to be doing that because it's just there's tons and tons of ideas that come out of this. So that I would just recommend it to be a little more, I guess, formalized and organized in a way that makes sense. And I don't have the perfect way to do that, but I'm just suggesting that's the way to go.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for volunteering to be more engaged and totally heard you on, one 90-minute session is not going to be the be all and end all of your engagement. So heard you there. In terms of additional areas, both formal and informal, again, want to reiterate that you filling out our survey that we'll send you after this is a really great step to make sure that we get really formalized data inputs into the plan. We'll also have additional forums for this audience and others that you might fit into based on the kind of work that you do. Our task force meetings, again, have been really, really helpful in surfacing some of these more specific priorities and needs. And then, we always have the opportunity to have another conversation. And that can be with our office, that can be with our federal program officer, Jodia, and it could be any combination of those. So thank you again. And thank you, Christine, as well. Maybe Sarah, do you want to go next on mute?
Sure. So one of the things that we're seeing, and I'm assuming everyone on here has the same sort of knowledge, that we're seeing more and more need as the number of devices increases, as the number of applications, especially for like STEM students and people pursuing, engineering, technology, that type of work increases. We're seeing the applications, the software applications, the requirements for that increase. And so whatever we do now, we also need to sort of future-proof it. So I think that one of the things, and I think this is where CAIs come in, is we can say, okay, these are the needs that we're seeing now, but we know in the next 2 or 3 years that these needs are projected to be, and we have algorithms for that, right? So I think that we could be of real help in that when you get 5 years in the future. So I don't know if the funds are coming out in 2024, if that means 2029, but you don't want to reach 2029 and look back and say, oh, we need all these funds again. You want to be able to have a plan that helps for now and also sort of does that piece. So that you really serve the community and they're still not behind at the end of all of this.
Sarah, thank you. You raised a point that I usually have in my presentation up top, but thank you for raising it now. It's really important to remember that this funding is one-time funding. When we say once in a generation, we really mean it. We're not going to get this opportunity again. So we really have to think about sustainability of the programs that we're designing, of future-proofing the technology for sure, as Sarah raised. And also, what was the last thing I wanted to say? Oh, and also structural change, right? We have to make sure that we are addressing the root causes of this and not just having Band-Aid solutions. So completely agree with that. It is a priority for the planning that we're doing. And if you have ideas, and particularly, when we come out with the plan, if you feel that, it does not have that long-term view, that is a really good point of feedback for us as we work to refine the plan through the fall. So just want to flag that for everyone. Anybody else? We are coming up on the end of the session. So if you wanted to get your have your thoughts heard, this is your last opportunity during the session. But of course, you can always email us at connectall@esd.ny.gov. You can go to our website, broadband.ny.gov. You will receive an email from us after this to fill out that survey. And I am, just imploring you again to make sure that you fill that out. It's really specific to CAIs. And we really need that information to design the programs and start to answer the great questions that you've raised today. I think maybe Allison will have the last word here, saying, may I suggest for future Zoom engagements that you enable the ability to copy paste the chat since critical info is being shared. Yes, I think I didn't realize that was not available to you all, but I will also reiterate that we are cataloging the entire chat. And the plan is to have a publicly available FAQ that gets at answers to all of these questions and is continually updated. And so we are using these questions to design that FAQ, and we'll certainly share it when it's ready. But thank you, Allison, for that note. We always want to improve these sessions. Okay, so to close, get you out of here on time. This is the QR code for the follow-up survey that I have been hammering the drum on. You'll also get this link via email. So if you can't fill it out immediately, just please make sure to fill it out as soon as possible. Also in that survey will be your opportunity to indicate your willingness to participate in additional conversations. And so we have a couple of the names here of folks that were not shy, but for the rest of you, you can indicate within the survey if you want to continue to engage with us. We will share additional forum events over email, and thank you all for registering today. So we have your information. And one last plug for our office's email, connectall@esd.ny.gov. And broadband.ny.gov for all of the engagement, those summary notes I've been talking about. That's all available on our website. Okay, with that, next slide, I think. That just has our email. Yes, thank you. Thank you all so much for joining today. The CAIs are always a really spirited group when we've seen them across all of our different engagement, and so impressed with you all, the 70 of you all that have stayed with us for 90 minutes, and the over 100 of you that joined at any given time. We really appreciate your time today. We will share the slides, the recording, and please fill out the survey. Thank you, and we'll be in touch soon. And with that, we will end the session. Thanks.